So I'm here today because I promised a while ago, maybe about a week or two ago, that I would tell this story. My friend Sarah commented on one of my posts on Instagram. She wanted to know the backstory behind one of my Instagram posts. And I said that it was a very long story and I couldn't get into it at the moment because it's super long, it's difficult to type out, it's just too much, and I would just make a video at some point and post it on there. So here I am. But first of all, before we get started on that, can we take a second to appreciate my earrings, my new earrings? You see those? I got these in Japan recently and I love them. They're like little planets. If I was a cat, I think I would really have a lot of fun with these earrings. Or my kindergarten students from when I was working in Korea. Oh, I miss them. Anyway, okay, so to my story. This was New Year's Eve 2015, right? So it was carrying over to the year 2015. And I'll try to make this story quick, but it is a long story. So I was on my own and I wanted to go party at this street. I think it was just called Bar Street. Like that's the tourist name for it, Bar Street or something like that. I really wanted to go out there, but I didn't want to go by myself. Not really because I don't like to be by myself, but rather for safety reasons. Because I travel by myself a lot, and that's not an issue. The issue is for safety reasons, for safety purposes, I didn't want to go out into that party in a what I knew was going to be a big crowd. In a foreign country where I don't speak the language, and I didn't want it to be a situation where nobody knew where I was. And this is an important safety tip for everybody out there, guys and girls, men, women, children, everybody, right? Don't go somewhere without letting somebody know where you are. I'm 36 years old and I still tell my sister, actually, my sister Nancy, holla. I always tell my sister Nancy when I'm going anywhere, if I'm flying somewhere, I send her my itinerary, my ticket information, my flight information in case of any sort of emergency. She has all my information. So always let somebody know, even if I'm meeting up with friends or if I'm going out with like a guy that I met, right? And if I'm going out for like the first couple times or whatever, I send my sister a message, hey, by the way, I'm meeting up with this person. This is the person's name. Here's where we're meeting. This is what we're going to be doing. My sister knows everything, just in case. So, important safety tip. Seriously. I was staying at a hostel in Siem Reap, and downstairs on the ground level of this hostel, they had a big restaurant and a swimming pool and a bar and all sorts of really cool stuff, right? So I decided to go downstairs and just mingle with people, right? And there were a couple of really long tables, like kind of like those tables that you see at like feasts, and like if you watch Game of Thrones, I'm a huge Game of Thrones geek. So you see those long feast tables where like 40 people can be sitting there. They had a couple of those really long tables and then some of the smaller tables also. So it looked like a lot of these people had just met, and I just decided to just dive right in there and join the conversation, right? I sat down and I started just kind of listening to what people were saying and trying to kind of insert myself into the conversation. Out of nowhere, this one guy who I wasn't talking to, who I don't think was talking to anyone either. I think he was just kind of sitting there, just kind of like gauging the group, you know, just kind of listening to everybody, whatever. He was sitting kind of across from me, right? And he says, "Do you believe in God?" And I was like, that came out of nowhere, right? He just very, very clearly was like, "Do you believe in God?" And I didn't know whether he was gonna be like pro or con. Not that it matters, but I was like, I'm not sure where you're going with this, man. So I said, and I'm Christian. So I said, yeah, I do. Well, why would you? Okay, so he's con. So we ended up having this long conversation. He was very, very anti-religion, anti any sort of deity, right? He was very atheist, which I'm cool with, you know, whatever. If you believe, if you don't believe, whatever it is that you believe in, as long as you're not hurting anybody, I'm cool with it, right? So, but he was just very, very aggressive and very, just very aggressive and very angry. And I wasn't sure why, but he just had a huge issue with anybody who who identified with any sort of religion. And he was like, why would you believe that? That's stupid. You know, the religion is for people who aren't capable of thinking, blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, you know, you can think whatever you want. That's fine. But this is what I believe in. This is why I believe in it. Towards the end of the conversation, he had really calmed down. He was much more willing to listen. He was much more stable, I want to say. He wasn't as angry, and so he was much better, and we actually ended up having a really lovely conversation. But anyway, at the end of this conversation, maybe like an hour and a half into this, somebody finally decided, okay, it's time to go. It's close enough to midnight. We should head out to Bar Street, whatever, and join the party. And so we walk over there. It was a huge crowd. I mean, huge crowd. The Siem Reap doesn't really look very big to begin with. I don't think there are that many people living in Siem Reap. A lot of people were on this street, Bar Street. I mean, it was packed. It was like sardines.
I love that song.
Too many people, but they wanted to join in. I wanted to join in too. You know, there was some good music going on. We get into the crowd immediately. As soon as we walked into this crowd, I started thinking this was a mistake. I shouldn't be here. There's too many people. I really like literally everybody was pushing up. There was no room. And fortunately, I know enough just from traveling around to not carry anything of value with me, right? Like I had my phone, of course, because you have to have your phone in case of emergencies. But anything else aside from that, I mean, like I had a few, I can't remember right now the Cambodian currency, rupiah, I think. But I had a few rupiah in my bag, but really it was very little. We're in this crowd and I start seeing, no joke, we're so packed like this. I see little kids, like little children, 4 or 5 years old, weaving through people's legs because they're the only ones that can possibly get through this crowd because there's so many people going in the same space that the only way that you can get through is if you're crawling in between people's legs. And so you have little 4 and 5-year-old children and they're weaving through and they're going into people's pockets, taking their wallets, taking their phones, taking their money. I look down and I catch a little boy red-handed as he's in this girl's bag. And he looks at me and then he leaves it and then he retracts his hand and then he scurries away. Right? That's what was going on at the time. So I start to worry even more because I'm thinking, okay, there's a bunch of little kids running around stealing people's wallets and phones and money and whatever. I'm in a crowd. I feel like I'm gonna get crushed by these people. Then I look up and I see these people like just standing on the roofs of these buildings, or like it's a street, right? It's a street like this with all these bars and restaurants and cool places, right? And on top of those buildings, there are some people standing up there with what looks to be like most likely flour, right? Like some sort of like white flour powder, like for baking, right? And they're tossing flour out into the crowds. But where my mind went with this is the warnings that my tuk-tuk driver had been giving me this entire time, right? Be careful on Bar Street because There have been a lot of incidences of locals drugging people. There are a lot of incidences of pickpocketing, which I just saw, right? Right, and there's a lot of times when people will do whatever they have to do to take your money, right? Because they just assume that if you're a tourist in Cambodia, that you've got money, right? You've got to have more money than the people in Cambodia, no matter what, which is true, right? If you're a tourist in Cambodia, you definitely have more money than the people in Cambodia, right? So my mind went to, how far will these people go to take our money, right? Will they go as far as to drug us with whatever it is that they're tossing out there, right? And that might sound to you like paranoia, but in that instance, when I'm being crushed by the crowd, when I'm looking down and I'm seeing little kids, little children, who puts them up to this? What kind of people put their kids up to just get out there, run amongst, the crowd and steal people's money, their wallets, their phones, their whatever they have, right? And I understand the situation is dire, the situation is tough, but I'm reacting to everything that I'm saying, right? I'm thinking this is definitely no good. So I start going into a small panic, right? Like, I need to get out of this. I need to get out of this situation. And then it's not just me, it's the people that I'm with also, right? So I wasn't the only one freaking out going, this ain't right, right? So I look over to the girl who was standing next to me, and there's amongst this crowd, there's all the other people that were with, and they go, we didn't even need to say anything, right? All we did was, and so we all linked hands. I was at the very end, right, of this group. There was a whole line of us who had tried to enter this crowd, or who had entered into this crowd. We were in the middle, smack dab in the middle of this crowd, right? And so there were a couple of guys at the head of the line, if you will, right? Who just decided, because we were trying to get through this crowd and we couldn't. There was no joke. This is not an exaggeration. We were really packed in there. There was no moving, right? So these guys decided, screw it. We're getting through this. We're getting out of here no matter what, right? So they said, link hands, hold hands, hold hands strongly. Okay. So I hold on to the girl in front of me, and these guys just start bulldozing their way through the crowd, right? They're just shoving through the crowd, and we're getting through or whatever. But at some point, of course, the crowd got upset because we're pushing right through there. And somebody just did this with their body, right? And ended up cutting the link between me and the girl in front of me. And I panicked because now I'm stuck in the middle of this crowd by myself, right? And I'm trying to call for them and they're not hearing me. The girl, of course, that I was holding hands with, she knows that I'm not there anymore because I'm not holding her hand anymore. So she's looking back, but she's being pulled away. And so I'm panicking. I don't know how long I was there for, honestly, because it was one of those moments where things slow down. You see that in the movies, and you've probably had those situations before when you're in a situation where there's danger or whatever. It's like everything goes into slow motion, and you're seeing and you're experience everything very slowly. You're really hyper analyzing everything that's happening, that's going on around you, right? And like I said, I don't know how long I was there for, but all of a sudden, all I saw was this big hand come at me, right? Like this. And I didn't even get a chance to really understand what was happening other than this big hand coming at me. So I see this big hand coming at me like this and grabs me by the shoulder, and the hand slips down, grabs me, not by the hand, because I just by whatever he could, or the hand could, grab me like this and just start pulling me out, right? Starts pulling me out, and I'm thinking, who's pulling on me? Oh my God, I'm gonna die. Somebody's trying to kidnap me, right? And then I look over, and who was it? It was the atheist guy. The atheist guy that I had been having the conversation with back at the hostel. He was in our group, of course, And he was the one who noticed, apparently, that I was missing once they all got out of the crowd. I mean, I must have been in there for a while because they all managed to get out of the crowd, and somebody said, "Hey, where's our Mexican?" What happened to our Mexican? Right? So he came back into the crowd and pulled me right out of there, right? So I'm sure he talked to the girl who was holding hands with me and said, what happened? Oh, she got separated. She's back there somewhere. So the moral of the story is, when you go out there and you travel by yourself, which I do all the time, right? I'm not trying to tell you that you shouldn't travel by yourself. What I'm trying to tell you is make yourself known. Make sure that people know where you are, that people know who you are, that you are there, that you are present, so that in case that anything happens, they go, "Hey, what happened to our brown girl?" Right? Because literally that's how I introduce myself a lot of the times. It's like kind of a good icebreaker, right? "Hi, I'm Marisol, I'm Mexican, how are you?" Right? Because when I'm traveling, there aren't a lot of us, right? There's a lot of white people who are traveling, not a lot of brown people, and not a lot of Mexicans or Mexican Americans. There are actually, I've noticed there are a lot more Mexicans from Mexico than Mexican Americans out there traveling in the world, right? So when I introduce myself, a lot of times I tend to just be like, "Hi, how are you? I'm Marisol, I'm Mexican. Where are you from?" So make sure, and people laugh, you know, they think it's funny. Make sure that you make yourself known. Make sure that people know who you are and that you are there. Because if anything happens, if you didn't make yourself known, they're just gonna be like, "Okay, we're good, we're all here," right? But in that situation, because I had made myself known, I joined in the conversation. I had that long conversation with that guy who was very anti-religion, right? He, at least, and I'm sure the girl who was holding hands with me, right? They were like, "Hey, we left her. She's back there," right? And he came back and he got me. So that was really scary. That was a really, really scary experience. We managed to get out of there. He pulled me out of there, thank God. I'm sure he wouldn't like me saying that, but whatever. I haven't seen him ever since. But thank God he was there, because he pulled me out of this situation, and everything was okay, at least with us, right? We were all there. We all survived. But yes, make yourself known. Talk to people. Don't just travel around by yourself being like, I'm independent, nobody needs to know where I am. No, they do need to know where you are. Tell your family, tell your friends, tell at least one person where you are. Okay, I tell my sister, "Hey, Nancy, I'm going to this place. Here's the information. Here's who I'm gonna be hanging out with. If I disappear, make sure you check with this person," right? I tell her like that, and she laughs. She's like, "Okay, whatever." But yes, have an awesome day, have a beautiful day, and stay safe.